What is up, MMA True Believers? I am Jason Burgos. I'm very pleased to be joined by a man I have enjoyed interviewing many times before. He's a former World Series of Fighting champion, two-time PFL champion, a successful businessman, loving husband, and most recently a new dad. That man I speak of is the one they call the party, although now with a baby around, the party at home is definitely over. But he is the one and only Lance Palmer, Mr. $2 Million Man. Thanks for the time ahead of your next fight.
Heck yeah, man. I appreciate it. It's been a while.
Yeah, too long, too long. So because of this, I have so many questions for you. So, first, I just brought it up too. I wanted to talk to you about fatherhood and if it's had any effect on you. And the only reason I say if is because you have always been a guy that has your shit together outside of the cage. You've set up a nice life for yourself and your wife. You own a couple businesses, understand the importance of planning for your future and stuff like that. And decisions as a fighter, you've done it more about opportunities to make the most money possible instead of, oh, what can get me to the UFC kind of thing. And I've always respected that. So has being a father changed like your mindset on how you handle your career at all? Or has it changed things not too much and it's just how like this new huge responsibility that kind of it has to make your training and stuff like that take a little bit of a backseat because you gotta raise a baby?
Well, I think the timing of the baby and the 17-day quarantine from the last fight and the things that kind of the things that PFL put in place for being able to do this season have been the only things that have kind of put a wrench into fatherhood as far as being away. My wife has done a great job. She's been the one at home, and her and our babysitter, they've done a great job of when my wife's at work, the babysitter's taking care of the baby. And then when my wife comes home, she's super mom. She's taking care of the dogs and the baby and trying to get her workouts in and do all of her stuff outside of work and her client work for her other business. And so, I mean, for me, she's really taken a lot of the weight from since the time the baby's been born. And because I went into fight camp for the last fight 2 weeks after she was born. So I was basically gone that whole time. And this time also is I would go home on the weekends, basically Friday night through Sunday, hang out with her and the baby, and then head back to New Jersey for a training week and did that for about 5 or 6 weekends in a row before coming into quarantine here because this is a 12-day quarantine instead of 17. So it's, it's 5 days less, but it doesn't change the amount of time that I'm gone from home because the days that it fell on and being gone that entire week for training, it wasn't like I could drive back to Ohio for a day and then come here and check in.
Yep.
I basically came directly from a week of training camp into here. So it's going to equal out to about 18, 19 days before I'm home from the last time I was home. So FaceTime has really been a lifesaver. And my wife, she's a badass. She's been, doing it all by herself, basically, besides having the babysitter for when she's at work. So that's been the only change. It hasn't changed anything mentally for me, I don't think. Like you said, I can compartmentalize things pretty well. And going into the last fight, I just felt like I just didn't want to be here because of the quarantine and the regulations of having to be here the 17 days. And it was just, to me, I've been outspoken about it. I think it's kind of silly, and it's, the country's open.
Yeah.
As of last Friday, New Jersey doesn't require masks to go into places. It's full capacity. All the restaurants, everything's open. But for us to be able to compete, we had to come into this quarantine for 12 days, and we had to wear masks in the hotel around other fighters who were quarantined and getting tested every day for COVID. So, I mean, we're getting tested every day for COVID until the day of the fight. And then it doesn't matter if we get tested.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, if 17 days was so important the first time, why drop it to 12?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that don't really make any sense.
Yeah.
And the day after my fight on April 23rd, April 24th, the UFC had sold out crowd in Jacksonville. No quarantine for their fighters. Everybody was walking the streets and being able to enjoy their fight week. And just, to be able to go down to the boardwalk here in Atlantic City and be able to get some fresh air.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm not asking to be able to go out and party and, go hang out on the carousel out there. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I just want to be able to, walk around, let my legs free and be able to, walk outside, get some sun. Like there's a balcony that we can go out on, but regular guests of the hotel are out there smoking cigarettes. It's not really fresh air, but this is what we have to do to be able to fight. And so, that's where we're at with it. And a week from today, we weigh in. So we're getting closer. We're 8 days out from the fight and getting closer, and it's going pretty quick. Luckily this time I have Juan Archuleta with me. He's coming fresh off of his last fight, so he was able to take the time away from his family and come be here with me. So it's he's sacrificing a lot too, and I don't expect people to sacrifice their family and other things just to be here with me. But Juan and I are really close, and there's a lot of things that we do to help each other out. So I really appreciate that.
And it's even more crazy because you got a playoff game in the Garden tonight with the Knicks and the Hawks. They're gonna have like 15,000 people there. So the fact that you can't leave your hotel room is mind-boggling. But Juan, I've interviewed him a lot of times. Fantastic guy. So since you two are you guys in the same room together, or do you have to get different rooms for this quarantine? Because I've heard that even corner people have to be in different rooms.
Yeah, we're in separate rooms, and they suggest that you don't hang out. But I mean, we're all getting tested every day. So every day when we go down and we go to the workout rooms, the same workout rooms that the other guys are going into, the same workout equipment for the cardio equipment. We have our own red zone, so we're not stuck in the room, but we're not able to go out into the casino. So there's no interaction with anybody who's not getting tested, basically.
All right.
And so we're getting tested every day. And, we can order groceries and things to the room, but we can't go and do things, basically. We're stuck in here. So, but yeah, he's got his own room. It's good because, being stuck in the same room with somebody, I don't care how much you like them, it's going to get old. So he has his own room, and, we hang out pretty much all day together, but at least, like right now, he went to his room to take a nap and relax a little bit. So there's, it's just having privacy is cool, but being isolated for 12 days is also a different situation.
And for the people that watch this, I completely understand what Lance means because, yes, these hotel rooms are nice. I had to do one day for Bellator Media, and that room seemed so small after a certain point. So if another person's in there, forget about it. You lose your mind. But that said, now going back to the idea of competing so you can earn as much as possible, a lot of fighters are easily motivated by the idea of being champions. Climbing that mountain gets them to the gym every day, gets them up every morning. But before the PFL, like I mentioned, you were already a World Series fight champion, now a two-time PFL champion, and you chose to stay on with the PFL instead to save going to the UFC because you understand that making $1 million payday in a 6-month period is really common in MMA and stuff like that. But the motivation to be the best compared to say just fighting for a big payday are very different things. You were already far and away the best in the PFL. The league didn't say bolster the division like it did other divisions. Going into this season, does that motivation to climb the same mountain you've already climbed a couple times, does it get harder? And was the surprise loss to Bubba Jenkins, was it like a blessing in disguise at some level? Did it kick you in the ass in a way maybe you didn't even know you needed?
I'll go back to the motivation part of it as far as I know the guys that are in this league at my weight are tough, and they're all really good guys, and it's gotten better each year. But also, when you look at the outside of, and this is kind of getting into what other people think, and I don't really care what other people think to an extent, but when you look at wanting to be the best and leaving a legacy, you have to look at that because that's all that matters, honestly. So we go back to that, and it's it's hard to get motivated to fight someone who is good, but the general public has no clue who they are or don't care who they are.
Right.
The top 5, top 10 in the UFC featherweight division are the only people that the world care that you beat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even Michael Chandler before, he was a big name
Yep.
in Bellator for a long time. He was a champ for a long time. Eddie Alvarez, I mean, he was a huge name in Bellator for a
Mm-hmm.
long time before even coming to the UFC. Neither of those two got the amount of clout they really deserved
Yep.
until they fought for the UFC title or even fought in the UFC. So that's always going to be on my mind. It's never, I mean, at this point, it's not about climbing this PFL mountain anymore. It's more about um, gaining the traction I think that I feel I deserve for the amount of work I've put in over the last decade of fighting. And I feel I'm still learning and I'm still getting better and still growing. So yeah, I think it is hard to find that motivation a little bit. I know that, I mean, money motivates a lot of people, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people are motivated
Yeah.
by the fact that you can earn $1 million in a
Yeah.
short period of time. But it's also a crap load of work. It's not just, show up, beat a couple guys and win. It's a lot of work. I mean, it's decades of work that go into just getting to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't feel that, you know, after the 2018 season, I made a little over $1 million before paying everybody and paying taxes and this and that.
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't really make up for the amount of years from when I was 9 years old, the amount of years I put in with wrestling and the dedication that my family has sacrificed and I sacrificed, and getting through college and training in college at a high level of wrestling, and
Mm.
and then starting my MMA career and probably making less in my first, you
Yeah.
know, 10 fights than I've made, in one of my recent fights.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know if that's comparable, but it's somewhere close,
Yeah.
So when it comes down to the money factor of it, there's, you know, it's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money, because even if you're a very frugal person, you have to worry about paying everybody out, then paying taxes after all your
Yeah.
write-offs,
Yep.
and the expenses of your fight camps alone.
Mm.
All that stuff factors into it beforehand, because there's nothing that's covered by anyone else. We're paying everything out of our own pocket just to be
Yeah.
able to train. So obviously, yeah, it's nice to say that you've won $1 million tournament twice, and you have money saved up, or you've done things with your money to invest, or build other businesses. But at the end of the day, money comes and goes, and the motivation and legacy is really what lives on. And the motivation for me is to prove that I'm the best
Mm.
at my weight class. And I think, I mean, the only way that I can really prove that is against the top 5 guys in the UFC. I mean, there's really no other way to do that. I mean, I can talk all day about it. People can, kind of make their social media things with the 4 champs from, myself and Bellator and
Mm-hmm.
Ton Lee and ONE FC, and then the
Yeah.
UFC champ Volkanovski, of like, a four fighter playoff with the, tournament type deal, who would win this or that. It's all hypothetical unless everybody's together or cross promoting, but nobody wants to do cross promoting
No.
just
Nope.
because, that doesn't help one organization. It just, it kind of makes the other organizations look better if they win, and one doesn't look as good if they don't win.
Yeah.
So I mean, the UFC is the ultimate proving ground. It always has been. But when you're looking at making money for a long career, and you either have to be at the top of the UFC and be making the top money in the UFC, or, these other organizations are paying guys really well to fight. And, just a per fight purse is a good amount of money nowadays. It's getting better and better as we go. But for me, the motivation is to prove that I'm the best. And I don't think that changed after the last fight. I don't
Mm.
think there wasn't really like a fire that needed to be lit or
Mm-hmm.
anything. It was
Okay.
mainly um, going into that fight. On the day of the fight, I just didn't want to be there. I wanted to get out. I
Hmm.
wanted to get home. 17 days of kind of just waiting around, and kind of I didn't care about my opponent. I didn't care about the fight. I was even in the fight thinking like, man, this guy can't do anything to me, and I'm not even fighting back. And I mean, there was a lot of people close to me that were like, was everything all right? What's the, you know, what happened in there? Because you didn't look like the Lance
Yeah.
Palmer that
Oh yeah.
always goes out there.
Yep.
And I knew that, and there was no excuse of anything that happened. It was just, I really just didn't want to be in the cage. And you know, it was a weird thing, because it wasn't like I don't want to fight anymore. It was just, on that night, I just wasn't there. I wasn't present. I was in the fight, but it was almost like I was watching somebody else fight. So it was it's a weird thing, and it's kind of hard to explain unless you ever had that. And I have a couple buddies who played football at the college level and higher level in the NFL and stuff, and they said the same thing. They're like, man, there were games where I felt like my feet were in the mud and everybody was just running past me the whole game, and I felt like I was there, but I was watching it on TV type deal. And that's exactly how I felt in that fight. I didn't really have an excuse of, I mean, my camp was great. Everything was, my weight cut was great. I felt great. Even my morning shakeout was great. But, you know, by the time I got back to the warm up room and was getting ready to go, I was like, man, I can't wait to go home and see the baby, see my wife, sleep in my own bed.
Yeah.
It was more of just kind of being over the situation. I was over it before the fight even happened. And the only way to get out of the quarantine was to fight. Yeah. And that was kind of how I looked at it. And I didn't think that way the entire quarantine. I wasn't happy with quarantining, but I was excited to fight. I was excited to go out there and you know, beat a guy who was talking a lot of trash. But you know, sometimes it just doesn't go that way. Sometimes you're not there. Like, I've had fights where I didn't feel my best, but I would still go out and be able to fight hard. Yeah. And this fight, I just didn't really care either way what happened. I was just ready to go home, and that was basically it. So, but I had to put that past me, and you got to have a short memory span. Same as wrestling my whole life. I mean, in wrestling, you could lose a match and have to wrestle again in the wrestlebacks 20 minutes later just to get into the placing round. So you have to have a short memory, and you have to be able to get back on the horse. And there's a lot of people who can easily, you know, be like, screw it, you know, take it and not learn from it. But what I did learn from it was just to stay focused on the task at hand. And this is the situation we're given. We don't have another choice. We don't have a choice of like, I don't really want to quarantine, but I'll show up for the fight. That's not an option. So we just have to take what we're given and make the best of it. And that's the only thing mentally that I have to change as far as that goes.
And that, what happened to you? I mean, if you follow the sport enough, that there's other fights that's happened to, and people in championship fights, and you just get there and you don't like feel it, and it's a tough thing. It's the battle of being a professional athlete, stuff like that. And how much do you feel like, because you dealt with the quarantine for the first time before a fight, never had to deal with that. You dealt with having to be a father away from your child, your newborn baby, that something you didn't have to deal with. Now the second time around, you mentioned, like, you know, that kind of thing. Like, were there any other things you've done this time around? Because I would guess those things probably happen, and that's only human for those things to have an effect. Or were there different things? Like, is Juan Archuleta being there something that wasn't there the last time? You know, are there other facets, like the FaceTiming, like, that are really helping, that you feel like, you know, will get you through this shitty quarantine and more in fight mode by the time fight night comes around?
Yeah, I think definitely having Juan here is a big difference, because I was by myself last time. I mean, Juan had a fight 2 weeks after mine. He was actually fighting Sergio Pettis that fight. And so he was getting ready for his fight, and I wasn't going to try and get other people to take 17 days out of their life just to be here. Like, Mark Henry owns his own restaurant, pizzeria. He's not going to even be able to do 17 days. So he showed up the night before the fight, or however long, 2 days or whatever that they made them quarantine. And then they were going to try and not even let us see our coaches that just showed up until going back for the fight. And I was like, no, it's not. The morning of the fight, I at least need to do a shakeout. Like, these guys are good. We didn't even get COVID tested on the day of the fight. So what are you worried about? You know, us not seeing each other. There was just stuff like that was just different. And Ricardo Almeida, he's got his own academy, so he's not going to be able to do 17 days. Like, these people have families,
Yeah.
businesses. Coach Casey Halstead, same thing in Las Vegas. He's got 10th Planet. Like, he runs a real deal business out there. He's got 2 schools in Vegas for 10th Planet, and these other coaches have other fighters and other organizations who are fighting the week before me, 2 weeks before me. Like, we basically got put in quarantine 3 weeks before our fight last time. So when you break it down, that's a long time for anybody. Like, you can't just ask for 3 weeks off of work to go help a guy get ready for a fight. It just doesn't work that way. So, so I didn't expect any of that. And after my fight, Juan texted me and he was like, "Hey man, after my fight's done, I'm coming with you." He's like, we'll get this one back, just move forward from it. Like, I got texts from Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw. I had a lot of support from people who know me, just because people knew that wasn't me fighting out there. And it's like, I didn't want people, oh, poor me, I didn't feel like being there, this or that. I was just like, look, your supporters are going to support you through the ups and the downs. And the people who don't support you, they're not going to support you either way. So that's when you really find out the true people. And even my family, they were just like, you know what, take it on the chin, move forward. And luckily I had no damage in that fight. There was no injuries, no damage whatsoever. I mean, I think I may have had one scrape on my face from cage work and getting pushed against the cage, and that was it. Literally no damage whatsoever. So if I can come out of a fight with not even being there, not even being present mentally, and that be the worst that happens, then I'm blessed and I'm able to move forward with just taking a loss. So, but yeah, I'm super motivated for this fight, just to get in there and prove that was just, it was a bad performance on my end and I just didn't show up. So go out there and get this win, hopefully get a finish early on, and let the point system work itself out. But at this point, I just want to get a win, have a good performance. If I don't make the playoffs, I don't make the playoffs. We'll go, basically into free agency and see what happens next.
And that makes a lot of sense, especially for veteran fighters that have a regimen, have important people there that are always there, to have something like a 17 quarantine, because you weren't the only like big name former champion that had a setback in the first round of fights. The Tom Schultz lost, Anthony Pettis surprisingly lost. Verdum had the weird thing that happened with him, so it shows all these top fighters, champions, they didn't have great performances, and when you have something like that happen, it makes sense that it has an effect. But let's talk quickly about Jesse Stirn, your opponent on the 10th. I mean, essentially, the guy's a prospect, albeit a good one. It's just so odd for me to see a fighter of your caliber, what you have done in this sport, to still be having fights like this, like a top fighter champion fighting a guy who's just coming in for the first time from CFFC. But this is sort of the nature of the PFL, the roster they put together and stuff like that. So going to the motivation and stuff like that, like you mentioned, the playoff thing, you don't get into the playoffs, that you're fine with it either way. Whatever, you go into free agency, you're fine with that. How do you motivate yourself for this fight then, if it isn't fear of playoffs and missing the playoffs and missing that $1 million opportunity? You also mentioned that maybe people don't understand the fighters that you're fighting are very talented and maybe not giving them respect. Is the motivation simply for this fight, you've scouted Jesse and you're like, shit, this guy's really freaking good. This isn't just the anything can happen in a fight thing. I got to be careful for this reason.
I think the motivation a lot of times is, this guy gets an opportunity to fight me, and he gets to kind of try and prove himself or make a name off of me in this fight. Yeah. But the motivation isn't even that. The motivation for me is just to bounce back from the last fight and put on a good performance. And I know if I do my best, it's better than his best, and that's just how I feel and how I look at it. I don't really take too much detail. I mean, I've watched a couple of his fights. I saw that, like Ton Lee, the featherweight champ for ONE FC, he's a tremendous striker. He's actually a great guy. We coached him on the Ultimate Fighter back in the day. He actually knocked out Jesse in a fight. It might have been LFA a while back or something like that in the first round. And so, I mean, talked to him, taken some notes on their fight a little bit, just some different things. I mean, he's definitely he's definitely still an up and comer as far as technique and as far as he's not a grizzled vet. You know what I mean? Like he's tough and he's got skill, but he's just not fought the guys that I've fought.
Before this season started, you were like you had issues with the league. There was like that the incident with your father, and they had this weird comment about his own opinion, all this kind of stuff that got weird. Then there was like the contractual issues where you wanted to get your release. Were things like a little weird with you and the staff, like for that first fight of the season when everybody comes together, or were things smoothed out well before the season started? And how did we go from I kind of want to get the hell out of here to I'm excited for season 3?
Well, for me, it comes down to being excited to fight. Like that's what I want to do for my career until I decide to retire. I don't want to have to be forced to not fight like I was last year by somebody else outside myself.
Right.
And that was the main discrepancy that I had before anything else, before we get into, not being compensated for having to sit and not getting a release. And, the list goes on with that type of stuff. Then the stuff with my dad, who's not even a PFL employee or fighter or anything, like just a lot of weird shit that happened last year that was unnecessary on their end. And then going into this year, I was like, well, if I can't get my release and, the arbitration could take years or whatever it is because of the contract and everything on that end of it, I was like, okay, well, at least we're back to fighting now. I'm excited to fight. That's all I want to do is fight. I'm not, it wasn't weird with the staff because, to be honest, like the actual staff, the people I see day to day, those people are awesome people. And I've known a lot of these people for, 6-7 years, even longer. I mean, there's people that used to work for the UFC that work for PFL now that I knew when I was cornering a lot of my alpha male teammates back in the day. Like none of the staff had any hard feelings or anything towards me because it really had nothing to do with them. It was just the higher ups.
Yeah.
And, even Ray Seppo, we had a couple long talks on the phone, and, Ray's always pulling for me. I'm a World Series of Fighting guy. I know Ray outside of fighting. I mean, I trained at Extreme Couture in 2018. Ray and I have a great relationship outside of MMA. I mean, Ray's a great guy. We talk about our families. I ask him how he's doing. It's never just work with Ray. And, even Jim Bramson, who's the lawyer for PFL, we had great conversations last time during the quarantine. It was never about him or them. It was just, when it came down to it, disagreements between myself, Pete, and Don Davis. And, and I don't know if that situation will ever be resolved, face to face, but it's, I'm a person that can move on. I don't hold a grudge, but also I want it to be made right. So, that's all stuff for after this fight or after this season, whatever happens.
You mentioned going into free agency. Would it be safe to say, especially if you won a third straight championship, really nothing else to prove, is it safe to say 2021 season 3 is likely the last year of Lance Palmer in the PFL? Is it about this season, finishing the PFL legacy, getting a third straight championship, which may never be broken again unless Natancho does it in PFL championship history and stuff like that, and testing your free agent value finally before you start getting out of those prime years? Is that like the overall thing here? Like this is almost like a goodbye tour in a way, do you feel? Or in the end, maybe PFL still offers the best thing that you feel is your money worth, so you can't fully close the door yet?
Yeah, I mean, I never would close the door because, like I said, I don't hold a grudge or anything. It's not about, it really isn't about not wanting to fight for PFL or having, there's things that need to be worked out if I continue after this year or whatever.
Right.
But I think when it comes down to it, I think it's just, it's what's best for me mentally, of what I think that I want to do in this sport.
Right.
And when I had a Hewlett Packard computer from college when I first moved out to Sacramento, I was actually living in a garage that was transformed into a bedroom at one of Uriah Faber's houses on the block.
I like how it's
And
one of his houses. Not that it's his house, just one of his houses. You got a
yeah,
garage in one of them.
I think he had like 2 or 3 fighter houses at the time.
Oh my god.
And it wasn't like we were living in a mansion, so don't get it twisted. I was living in a fucking garage with a mattress on the floor with bugs and shit in there.
Oh wow.
And so and I was paying $300 a month to live in a
What?
garage, basically. So, but that's besides the point. So I move in there, and I had this Hewlett Packard, and just started training for fighting. I didn't even have my first pro fight yet. I got a picture off of Google of the UFC belt and put it as my background on that computer.
Yeah.
And even though that computer's like fried by now, I can still open the computer up, and on the background screen, it still has a picture of the UFC belt, and that's like in my head. That's if I stop fighting, and it's pretty, straightforward of what Michael Chandler said too. In I think might have been the Countdown or something. He said, if I'm 41 years old and I look back and I never had an opportunity or got the opportunity to actually fight for a UFC title, or even just fight in the UFC to see whether I'm good enough and prove to myself. It's not about anyone else. It's proving to myself up here. Like when I'm done and all is said and done, and I'm sitting there drinking a beer on my back patio, and I'm like, did I make the right decision, or did I not give myself the chance to do that?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. It's not really about, having a grudge with somebody or an organization or not wanting to fight somewhere. It's more just like, that was the goal that I've always had since the very beginning. And it may not be this year or next year, the year after, but my main goal in fighting is to be the best. And if I can't be the best, at least give myself a shot to be the best, or prove that I am or am not, what I believe I am. So, that's all it is. That's all it comes down to. It's a competitor in me, in my mindset.
Is there ever a point, with that kind of long-term goal you've always had? Is there a point though where you feel, oh, if I don't go sooner than later, am I risking something? Am I gonna be the best version of myself? Like you're in your prime years, you got a ton of experience. Like if you wait another year, another 2 years, another 3 years, is there ever that thought like, damn, am I pushing it too far? Am I not going to be the best version of me when I hit the UFC?
Yeah, I think there's always that question of, if I hit my plateau or whatever it is, or my peak, and then if I do get in, I get in after my peak is done or whatever it may be. But I feel like I'm learning every single week when I'm in training camp. I've been with Mark Henry since 2019, but it wasn't until 8 weeks before the first fight of the 2019 season. And then 2020, we didn't work at all because of COVID and having no fights. So I've really only worked with him for about 8 months of my entire career. And I feel like the improvements that I've made over that short time are just insane. And I think there's no ceiling yet.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of work that can be accomplished. A lot of accomplishments I'd like to do not outside MMA, but jiu-jitsu. I'm a brown belt. I'd like to get my black belt, and I'm still making improvements in my ground game and my cage game. And there's a lot of different things that I still feel I'm improving with. So I don't think I've lost a step, or I don't think that time's coming anytime soon within the next 2 years at least. So I'd like to, my body feels good. Everything feels good. I hate making weight. Other than that, everything is awesome.
Yeah.
So if I do get the opportunity to try and make the run at that title, that would be awesome. But obviously right now we're just focused on Jesse Stirn and going out and just putting a good performance together and proving to myself that I'm here for a reason and get the win. And once I'm back in the win column, everything else will fall into
If you
place on its
enjoyed this
own.
edition of Jason Burgos' Back Talk, you can follow and subscribe on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Player FM, and many more podcast formats.